So they told my parents I wouldn't live to 30. So my family swears that martial arts and then my approach to health is why I'm alive. That and the good Lord above. But yeah, it's basically that was the whole nutshell of it.
You're listening to Resilience Radio. I'm Irvin Eisenberg, host of the show, and I'm on with Uncle Tommy, the title that you often prefer. But for those of you watching, you can see Tommy here, and for those of you listening, you'll hear from him, and I've already heard from him a little bit. As always, the opinions on this show are not necessarily mine. I like to feature a wide variety of perspectives, and everyone's got a different body and medical history and needs, so not everything is going to resonate with you. Additionally, none of this is meant to be medically diagnostic or prescriptive in any way.
I always, I've been on a diet, one form or another, since I was 14 years old. And of course, I don't say the science has changed, but the philosophy behind what's a good diet has changed so much, since the mid 70s. It's like, it's crazy. But I have 3 types of arthritis. I'm not even supposed to be walking. And yet you see how I move.
Yeah.
And that's all, it's all because of, Qigong, martial arts, Tai Chi, eating right, keeping my medicines balanced, fighting against insurance companies for different kinds of things. The whole approach is a big chunk of my life.
So I'm really pleased to have Tommy on talking about martial arts, health, Qigong, and I'm sure all sorts of other great things.
It's great to be here. So.
Yeah, so I know you in the context of martial arts mostly, but I know you do Kung Fu and Qigong and Tai Chi, and you were just sharing right before we started here on the your personal health journey. Let's continue from that health journey. You had this diagnosis of juvenile diabetes, now type 1 diabetes, or type 1 diabetes. And you were given like 10 years to live. And what was your initial response to that, and how did that track into your health journey?
So what happened? What it was I was always fairly athletic, and I played baseball and was always around, and my parents had a hard time kind of corralling me because I was that kid with all the energy and wanted to go. And then I started, for some reason, getting real lethargic. I lost a ton of weight. I went from, I was 14. I think I was like 140 pounds, and I went down to like 93 pounds in a week. So they went to the hospital, and I was diagnosed with, back then they called it juvenile diabetes. Usually came out when you're in puberty as a boy, if it did come out. And I'm also half Native American. So it's prevalent in Native American culture too. It's been documented for, centuries, I guess, or scores of time, where they called it sweet urine. So in the initial diagnosis, apparently they told my parents I wouldn't live to 30, give or take. And back then, you had to sterilize your needles, and or you got disposables. You had like a mini lab kit in your bathroom because I had to boil my urine literally in a test tube in order to check my sugar. It was pretty, yeah, it was, barbaric, compared to today. But you had to do what you had to do in order to get it. And most teenage boys didn't want to do it, and that's why a lot of them stayed in poor health. I went to a juvenile diabetic camp, actually, and that's where I learned to take care of myself when it came to the diabetes. Now, I was already involved in the martial arts. By that time, I was, like a junior black belt and been doing it for years. So I didn't want to give up the athleticism. I also played a lot of baseball too. So,
and was that Kung Fu you were doing, the martial art that you were doing at that point?
So at that time, I was doing Kenpo.
Okay.
It was, that was so. It was Ed Parker's system in Kenpo. And I did that until I graduated high school. So, but at this time, I'm a freshman in high school. So, um, but there's a lot of restrictions back then. Like you weren't supposed to have any sugar at all. It was what they called a balanced diet. But looking back on it, it was heavy in protein and that kind of thing, really low on carbs. Um, but they called it balanced because you had to have like a certain amount of protein, carbs, and fats all the time. And then because back then, unlike today where you have a pump for your insulin and you can adjust it like how your pancreas does, back then you took a manual shot, and I was taking like 5 shots a day. I took a long-acting shot, in the morning, and then every time I ate, I took a small shot of a different kind of insulin. So I was on 2 different kinds of insulin and, and all that. So it life got complicated quickly. So, uh, but when they told my parents that he wouldn't live to 30, or he's got maybe 10 years or something, my father's like, I'm not telling the kid that. So my the doctor's like, well, you should have a chat with him. So my father's like, no, I'll chat with him, but you're going to tell him. So this is kind of a familiar story. So my dad called my pediatrician, and my pediatrician, and myself went to the internal medicine doctor, the specialist, and he was going to tell me how my prognosis, what to do, what to expect, what not to expect. And he really wanted to limit me. And my father's like, why limit him? So, but I, I guess my father was like, if you really want him to do that way, you need to tell him that. So, uh,
What do you mean by limit him? What
like
would
in other words,
limiting
they
you look
they
like?
wanted to put a lot of restrictions on me, and my father's like, "Let the kid have his freedom, and let's see what happens." Like in other words, he's already active. He's not a bad kid. He does, it's why do we have to watch the way we watch? Yeah, like they really wanted to clamp down on everything I was doing, like correct, quit again. They don't talk like this now. This was 1976, so they don't know what they knew now about exercise and that. I mean, they do, but again, it was how do I explain it? It was everything had to be monitored and modified and controlled really strictly.
Martial arts doesn't fit the
Martial arts didn't
very
fit in that.
reductionist view of medicine. Of
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. So we go
hard to
to the
do double
doctor's
blinds with
appointment.
something as dynamic as a martial art.
Exactly. So we go to this meeting, and my pediatrician knows me well, and my dad obviously knew me well. And so the doctor's telling me this, and finally I looked at him. I said, "What do you mean I can't do A, B, C, and D?" He goes, "Well, you can, but you got to modify it. You got to cut back. You got to watch this. You got to be able to do it." I'm like, "Well, so okay, I'll bring a candy bar or some juice with me. I'll eat a half a peanut butter sandwich before I start. I don't see why this is so complicated." And the guy was just really starting to hand me. Finally, I just said, "Well, fuck you," and I got up and walked out. So the guy's like looking at me and my father's like, I'm not gonna make him apologize for that. You're just trying to restrict my kid. And he's telling you that, obviously he's already done his homework and he's trying to, take this diagnosis and make the best of it, you know. So from that point on, I kind of knew that my health was in my control. It was in my hands, and I was gonna have to do my homework. Obviously, you seek counsel, you find people that's smarter or have done their homework before you. But you stay open minded, and then apply what works. And for me, the exercise and monitoring my diet at that time. But again, I still got sick. Don't get me wrong. I had some pretty close brushes with death, and we're going on 50 years now of being juvenile diabetic. You've seen me, teach and play and hang out. I don't move like an arthritic 60-year-old man.
You don't move like a 60-year-old man.
Yeah. So
So what did you, so your interest in health came out of necessity and survival. Initially, you were already interested in martial arts what was next? What path did this set you on, this diagnosis?
Well, after that, I had to figure out how to be a teenager and yet, take care of myself. Like when the kids after practice all walking to go get an ice cream and hanging out you know, with the cheerleaders and the girlfriends and the other guys and that kind of thing. I always had to limit it because, especially back then, like God forbid a diabetic have an ice cream. Now today, we've learned how to walk it off, burn your calories, everything in moderation, take the extra insulin. I have a continuous blood glucose monitor so I can watch it if it starts to go up. Where back then it was, you couldn't have like they just limited all sweets altogether. And again,
You're in the dark as to where your blood sugar was at, so you
yeah,
had to be extra careful.
right,
And
right.
we
Unless
just
your blood sugar was at 50, then okay, now you can have a glass of orange juice. It was it was bizarre at best. But again, they were just learning themselves because the before that, before modern, before the insulin became everyday use, there was not a lot of um ways to treat it. At least juvenile diabetes. There was no it was a bad diagnosis. So there's even stories of one of the knights of the round table died of sugar.
mm.
So
So I want to sort of fast forward to present day.
okay.
What would you say your health, your practice as far as helping other people with their health, your health philosophy, and how the martial arts you do and the movement practices, how that all fits in?
So I'm a strong believer that a body in motion stays in motion and a body at rest will stay at rest. I do believe that you should have a good, get a good night's sleep and rest up and meditate, in order to get yourself regulated. But I practice Qigong and Tai Chi, and those slow movements really help. Like they lower your blood pressure. They're great for your circulation. They promote oxygen to your brain, the insulin that I take, through a pump now. It's I don't know if you can even see it. It's like a little pod, about the size of a half an egg, that you can that just goes on, and it communicates
Mm.
through Bluetooth to a sensor on my arm that's all on my phone. So I can really lock down and monitor exactly what my body is doing. And it's the best way to mimic your own natural pancreas by using the exercises. And I do a lot of study on Eastern medicine as well. So I eat different herbs and stuff that help regulate your blood sugars, like dandelion root and other things that really work good. I do I I don't really eat a big breakfast. I use like a juicer, or would do like a nutrition drink, like like the super beets and other additives with nutritions and stuff, and I just drink that and move. So I really keep a close tab on what goes in my body. And obviously, there's you can modify too. I'm not afraid to go out to dinner as well. I'm not afraid to um, you know, again, it's kind of hard juggle. I don't always choose. How do I word this? I'm not afraid to go out and have a pizza and a beer, but I don't. It's not a weekly thing.
Was Tommy Given talking about martial arts and his experience in personal healing? This is Irvin Eisenberg. You're listening to Resilience Radio. If you like this episode, stay tuned. There'll be more like this. I'm probably going to have another Tommy episode at some point, and subscribe to the channel. The music was brought to you by Aaron Marcus with their tune Some Biological Process. You can check the show notes for full credits on that, as well as information about Tommy. Until next time, take care.